So I welcome you here today, and I welcome you to the beginning of a 7-week series, Journey to the Inner Self, where we're going to look at qualities of humanity and ways of being that when we put them all together at the end of the series, I'm hoping that you will be completely convinced of your brilliance and of yourself as a healing entity in the world. And that entity and that being a healing entity comes from consciousness. Because as we know, and you can join me in saying this, as within,
so without.
As above,
so below.
So our work is to go within, and the above for us always as metaphysicians means consciousness. We refer to it often, and biblically we translate heaven as consciousness. So our job is to become that healing element so that when we walk the earth, no matter where we go, who we're talking to, or what we are doing, that we bring that with us. So my goal for the 7 series is to convince you of what I know about you. And maybe you have inklings, but maybe you're not 100% convinced. If I do my job well enough, you will be convinced of what I'm saying. So that's my goal over the next 7 weeks, and we'll do that with practices and with a variety of practices that you'll see, and of course with our musical inspiration that always just opens the heart so the message can get through, deep inside of you. Here's something you don't normally see, and it's our altar for the next 7 weeks. And we have here a representation of a variety of faiths. Now, Tracy, before service, reminded me that we didn't have anything enough here to represent the African faith, so she's going to bring me something next week. Although we do have an official handmade, I don't know if it was in Kenya or Nigeria, this doll that was made. It's the Sacred Mother carrying the baby on the back and her arms. So next week she's going to answer it. If you do not see a representation here that you believe should be here, you get to tell me that, but you have to bring some. So if I do my job well enough, I'm going to convince you today of the importance of forgiveness. And I believe that this lesson is critical for each one of us, and Dave's reading was perfect. It was perfect. There's some dynamics about forgiveness, though, that I see a little differently. Because some of us, if we were brought up in a religious household, it was the spiritual and the right thing to do. It was the altruistic thing to do. That's good. But I have other reasons. I have other reasons that will give you a different why. And in that other why, it might show up a little differently, and it might not show up as you being so altruistic. It might feel a little more self-serving. And I want to call that good. I want to say when you're serving the self, it is not the individual self, it is the greater self of you. It is the God self of you. And that when you serve that God self of you, the world at large benefits. So there are a lot, when I was doing my research, there were a lot of things I read, and a lot of stories I read about things that happened to people that would have been really justified. It would have been very justified for these individuals to remain angry and distant and justified in their anger. And if I could tell you any one of these stories, and you could, if you weren't awake enough, could say, yeah, you're right. That person deserves to suffer. And they should not be forgiven. And I understand that sitting right here in this room, there are some of us, and I'm in that category. There's some of us who have had experiences in our lives where we feel justified of being that angry. We feel justified to not forgive. And I could, if I wanted to, suck you into my story and get you to sympathize with me and get you to collude with what I believe is limitation. Because being non-forgiving for me is a limitation. It's a serious limitation. And what Dave said in that reading, if I want to be prisoner of my own mind, the way to do it is to not forgive. So there was a story about this American student, this university student, who went to South Africa to support the abolishment of apartheid. And while there, one day, while driving, and I guess she was known, her presence was known, she was dragged from her car, beaten, stabbed, and stoned to death. Pretty shocking, right? Not something you see much in this country. And the parents, her parents, though, somehow, through whatever religious or spiritual practice they had, they knew that they had to get on the other side of that, because unless they got on the other side of that, they would be crippled by the memory of their daughter every time they thought of her. And they did. They got on the other side of it. There was, as you know, and most of you will know, although I must admit I was unconscious. I mean, raising my first 2 children, and then in the young years of 7, the news was barely something I could pay attention to. I was so busy just trying to be a parent. So busy just trying to not create reasons for him to have to forgive me. You know what I'm talking about, right? You know, just trying to be a present parent. And so being present to the world at large was not something I was very good at doing. So this is embarrassing, but it's the truth. It wasn't until it was in the form of a movie that I even knew what happened in Rwanda. I didn't know. I apologize for not knowing, but I didn't know. So I must say I was quite shocked and horrified, as at all genocide, as with all genocide. But when I did the research, especially for this project, because this is special, what they did there in that country, but during the time that there were 2 tribes, it was the Tutu and the Tutsi and the Tutsi tribes that went to battle. And 1 million of the Tutsi tribal individuals were murdered. 250,000 of their women were raped. Now, can you imagine, even 30 years later, someone coming up to you and saying, I think it's time to reconcile? I would think the emotional scars on that country would run deep. But that's not what happened. They set up a series of events in the way they were going to call certain individuals to justice, and they had their trials. Not everybody's been brought to justice yet. There's still individuals that were being accused of the genocide that are still free today, and they're hunted. But they decided at some point, when they had done enough of the legality that they wanted to do, that the next thing to do was to introduce the idea of reconciliation. I just want you to get it. So they took victims, we're going to use that term loosely here right now. They took victims and they found the perpetrators for their particular crime, so that the perpetrators on their family, people that murdered their family, so when someone survived, they took the survivors, they took the perpetrators, they put them together for the purpose of reconciliation. And then they took photos. There's a whole, if you Google this, you'll see. Now, I must admit, you're not looking at people who look totally in love. You're not seeing that, okay? But you are seeing them saying, okay, I'm willing to approach this. I'm willing to stand here and to stand for a bigger idea. Very moving, as far as I'm concerned. There are people, numerous stories, who have been victimized by drunk drivers, by violent gang members, all over this country, where the parents of the ones murdered or the siblings of the one murdered found out that they, or discovered how much they were at the mercy of that pain and that limitation, and they said, I have to move on. To the degree that they communicated with, again, the perpetrator, they created relationships, they created ongoing communication to the end sum of friendships. I want you to imagine that. Imagine someone you care about with your heart and soul. And for the parents in the room, it's easiest to imagine this with a child. Imagine that someone brutally takes the life of your child. And then someone suggests that you heal through the practice of forgiveness. It might take a minute or two to get on board, right? You with me with that? But imagine it. Here's the thing about being non-forgiving. Who do you believe suffers more? You're the one that you're looking to forgive. Who suffers more by not forgiving? You. The weight of not forgiving, the weight of carrying that ex-husband, the weight of carrying the ex-wife, the weight of carrying the mother, the father, the abuser, the weight of carrying the boss that fired you without notice, the weight of the coach who didn't acknowledge you, the weight of any time you were humiliated anywhere. You carry it. I carry it. And here's one thing I know more than anything else, and this is where I hope you're going to join me. I want freedom. I want freedom. I want freedom of expression. I want freedom to succeed. I want freedom to be fully expressed. I want freedom to be in love, madly, wildly, crazy in love. And I don't want that stuff in the way. Whether it's to love you or whether it's to love my fiance, I want to have that much love available to me. And here's the thing, that any single time we are not forgiving, it is not just the perpetrator that you are barring from you. You are putting up a veil between you and your love because it exists here. It is nowhere else. Are you with me?
Yes.
It doesn't exist outside of you. You are the love. You are the forgiveness. You are the activity of good. You don't go get it as much as it looks like you're going to get it. 13, 50-year relationship, it doesn't matter. It's not the other person. It's the love that you are allowing to be expressed in you that you are experiencing. So when we don't forgive, we have all the stuff that gets in the way. Is this making sense?
Yes.
I think it makes sense, but I just want to make sure. So, in order to have those individuals in our lives, here's the kicker. You have to first accuse them. You don't have to forgive someone you haven't accused. You don't have to forgive someone you haven't judged. You don't have to forgive someone that you haven't made wrong. Where is that activity? In me. God, say it. In me. I am the carrier of my pain. And I am the carrier of my freedom. There's nothing more true than that. There's nothing more true than that. You are the carrier. You are the one. It lives and breathes and has its way in and through each one of us. So if I choose not to judge, then I'm not gathering new people to have to forgive. So, the young adults here, right? The younger we are, the less stuff we have to do. So if you guys clean it up now, you don't have to carry anything into your 30s. But those of us who didn't know this, we carried a lot of stuff. And what I realized, because I've been doing a lot of pondering about this so I could be ready for you, and what I realized in the and again, I heard it reflected in Dave's reading, that it is fear-based. We don't forgive because we think we can protect ourselves. If I don't forgive you, I think in some way I can keep myself safe from being hurt again. Guess what? You know what, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. The only way it works is that I believe what Jesus said. When Jesus said, now they're not all in agreement. Not everyone's in agreement with what he said. But when Jesus says, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. That's a big test. So you have a little list clicking off in your brain right now as you're listening to me? You have a little list going on? Well, yeah, but she doesn't know what happened to me. If she knew, she wouldn't ask me to do this. And I ask you, how much do you want your freedom? How much do you want your freedom? Get it. How much? How much freedom do you want?
Total.
Because that freedom of that is freedom to love it. And here's the thing, the non-forgiveness seeps into us at a cellular level. If we become stiff, our bodies become stiff. It affects our heart, it affects our blood pressure, it affects all sorts of things in our body temple. Because it is who we are. So remember before I asked you during the meditation to come up with some names, right? Did everybody have somebody? Did anybody not have somebody? Okay. Right? It's possible. So, what I want you to understand is that that person doesn't have to be sitting here. The person doesn't have to be alive. The person doesn't have to care one iota. And many of them won't. Many of them aren't interested in your forgiveness, don't want your forgiveness, and they still feel right about what the hell they did. They are justified. How do we know that? Why would they have done what they did in the first place? Right? Because in some place inside of them, they thought they were doing right. And some place inside of them, they didn't know how not to. I am clear that by the life that I've lived, that my mother and my father, especially my father, would not have done what he did if he knew how not to. Because I believe in you, and so if he was sitting here, that's the same way I believe in him. That we all have within us, and that place I asked you to go to, that place that has never been hurt, harmed, or injured, anywhere, anytime, ever, that's who you are. You are not the story about non-forgiving. You are not the story about hurt. That's what happened to you. That's not who you are. And the sooner you and I separate out what happened to me from who I am, the sooner happiness finds us. Yes?
Yes.
So this is what I want to invite you to do. I want to invite you to close your eyes. Bring to mind, by the form of pictures, these individuals. Just let them go through, across your mind, the inside of your mind, like a movie theater, like a blank screen. See them, don't attach yourself to them. You're sitting way back in the audience, so there's plenty of distance between you and who they are. There's plenty of distance between you and the memory. And now I'd like you to repeat after me. I choose love.
I choose love.
I choose forgiveness.
I choose forgiveness.
I choose freedom.
I choose freedom.
I choose love.
I choose love.
I choose forgiveness.
I choose forgiveness.
I choose freedom.
I choose freedom.
Now keep it going. I choose love.
I choose love.
I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom. I choose love. I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom.
choose love. I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom. I choose love. I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom. I choose love. I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom. I choose love. I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom. I choose love. I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom. I choose love. I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom. I choose love. I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom.
That's for every individual in your life. Is there anyone's life that in the past you have seen as having harmed you, that their life is more important than yours? Is their life and their expression more important than your life and your expression? And if not, I say let them go. Let them go. Now, they don't have to be here. I said that to you. They don't have to be sitting here. They don't have to be in the conversation. It's you. It's you. It's all you. Because we kept it. Right now, nothing happened today. Did anyone have anything horrific today? Please don't raise a hand. If you do raise a hand, we'll take your side and take you to the practitioner. But the likelihood of something that of the magnitude that I'm talking about didn't happen today. So today is a perfect day. Today is a good day. This is your day. This is your springboard today. So you're here today, and anything that you feel that's differently than okay is alive where? In you, right? You brought it alive. It's in your memory banks. It's in your body temple, because that's where pain exists. So we get right now to practice this right now. So right now, out of those names, if there's still one person that still catches your attention, that person who left, the parent that didn't give you up, the father that left you and your siblings, whatever the story is, the one that just wouldn't stop hitting you. We have these stories. These are real. We don't live in a bubble here. We've all lived a real life. So bring that person to mind right now. And imagine that someone sitting next to you is that person. Doesn't matter the face of the person, because it's in you. Turn to someone next to you and just say, I forgive you. So the person that you just spoke to is just a placeholder. But if you've done this thoroughly enough, you won't even need that placeholder anymore. Let me tell you why you want to forgive. Because you want that freedom so much. You want to be so happy. You want to be ridiculously happy. You want to have joy be your common, everyday experience. You want health to be natural. And you want your prosperity to flow. You always hear prosperity teachers talk about that. And I think sometimes they say, yeah. But see, not flowing is not flowing. So the not flowing means it's in the way in our bodies, and it's in the way of our prosperity, and it's the way, well, actually, I was going to say that's true for artists, but artists, somehow when you're paid, you're always more creative. I don't know what that is. Look at some of the art, though. It comes out of tortured souls. So maybe you want to keep a little bit of pain. But it's on purpose. You want to do it because you want to be fully orbed and fully expressed. You want all of you and not one bit of you held back. Yes?
Yes.
I choose love.
I choose love.
I choose forgiveness.
I choose forgiveness.
I choose